I wish the acid had taken my life that night, because waking up felt even more painful. Those are Anna's first words as she opens her eyes in a cold hospital bed. Her face burned, her body broken, her heart shattered. The pain is unbearable, but what cuts even deeper is the silence around her. Not a single family member visits. Not even Adrian, the man who once promised to protect her, dares to show his face. Alone, rejected, humiliated, Anna feels abandoned by the entire world. Days turned into nights, and nights into endless suffering. The nurses come and go, doing only what their job requires. Society whispers cruel things about her, calling her damaged and useless. Hope, once a tiny flame, now flickers and almost dies. Everyone thinks her story has ended here. But then someone appears, a man who does not look at her scars with fear, a man who does not turn away from her fragile body or her broken soul. His name is David. Quiet, kind, and unshaken, he sits by her bed and gently takes her scarred hand into his. For the first time, Anna feels warmth instead of pity. For the first time, her heart dares to beat again. And this is where Anna's journey of rebirth truly begins.
For the first time since the attack, Anna felt her tears fall not from pain, but from something else. Hope. It was fragile, almost too small to grasp. Yet as David's hand wrapped around hers, a spark lit in the darkness. Her journey was not over. It was only beginning. The first days with David sitting by her side felt almost unreal to Anna. She had grown used to silence, to the feeling of being forgotten by the world. And then here was this man who came every day, not because he had to, but because he chose to. He brought with him an air of calm, a quiet strength that settled in the room like sunlight through a broken window. David never asked about her scars. He never demanded to know her story. Instead, he talked about the little things in life. He told her about the sound of birds in the morning, about the smell of fresh rain on dusty roads, about how the sun set over the village fields. His words painted pictures that allowed Anna to escape the confines of her hospital bed, if only for a few moments. And when she could not speak, when the pain was too much, he would sit in silence, his hand resting over hers, steady and warm. It was the kind of silence that did not feel empty. It was a silence that healed. The nurses noticed the change. The girl who once stared at the ceiling with lifeless eyes now turned her head toward the door each time David entered. Her shoulders, once hunched with despair, began to straighten. The bitterness in her gaze was slowly replaced with something softer, something dangerously close to hope. But not everyone looked at this with kindness. Madame Rosa and Bella, though they stayed away, still whispered cruel words behind closed doors. They called Anna useless, claimed she would never walk with dignity again, that no man could ever want her. Their laughter carried venom, but Anna no longer allowed it to pierce her as deeply as before, because each time she remembered their voices, she also remembered David's words. "I do not see you as broken. I see you as strong." As weeks passed, David encouraged her to take small steps. First, he helped her sit upright. Then, with patience, he guided her trembling legs to the floor. Anna stumbled, nearly fell, but his arms were always there to steady her. Each painful attempt was met with gentle reassurance. And then, one quiet afternoon, Anna managed to walk across the room unaided. It was clumsy, slow, her body still weak, but when she turned and saw David smile, she felt a burst of pride she thought she had lost forever. For the first time since the attack, Anna believed she might still have a future. And though she did not know it yet, this was only the beginning of a love that would change everything. Each day in the hospital seemed to bring Anna closer to a life she thought was lost forever. With David by her side, her world was no longer just about pain and scars. It was about rediscovering her strength, one fragile step at a time. The nurses watched with quiet amazement as the girl who once lay motionless in despair was now learning to stand, to walk, and even to smile.
David became more than a visitor. He was her anchor. He brought her small gifts, not of gold or wealth, but of meaning. A simple flower picked from the roadside, placed in a glass of water by her bed. A small book with worn pages, read aloud in the evenings when sleep refused to come. These gestures carried more value than diamonds. They told Anna that someone saw her, not for what she had lost, but for who she still was inside. There were moments when Anna's emotions overwhelmed her. At night, when the lights were dim and the pain of her body returned with force, she would break down, tears streaming silently. In those moments, David never turned away. He wiped her tears with gentle hands and reminded her that scars did not erase beauty. He told her that her spirit shone brighter than any wound. For the first time since the attack, Anna began to laugh again. It was hesitant at first, a small sound, almost fragile. But when David laughed with her, the walls of her sadness began to crack. That laughter, though simple, was proof that she was alive, that she could still feel joy. Yet outside the hospital, Rosa and Bella continued their cruel games. They whispered to neighbors that Anna would never recover, that she was ruined forever. But their venom no longer poisoned her heart the way it once did, because inside her, a new voice had grown louder, the voice of David, steady and unwavering, telling her she was worthy of love. Weeks later, Anna walked outside the hospital for the first time. The air was cool, the sky painted with shades of gold. David walked beside her, his hand close enough to guide but not to control. She looked up, breathing deeply, and for the first time since her nightmare began, she felt alive. That day marked more than just recovery. It was her rebirth. And as David's eyes met hers, something unspoken passed between them. A bond that neither scars nor cruelty could destroy. A bond that hinted at the love about to bloom.
Life outside the hospital was not easy for Anna. Her body was still weak. Her face still bore the marks of pain, and society's stares still carried judgment. Yet every day, David was there. He walked beside her through crowded markets, not once letting go of her hand. People looked, some whispered cruel words, but David's calm presence shielded her like armor. For Anna, this was the first time she had felt protected, not by wealth or false promises, but by genuine love. David encouraged her to rebuild her strength. He took her to the fields where the breeze was soft and the air fresh. They walked slowly, step by step, until Anna could stand without trembling. When she stumbled, he caught her. When she doubted herself, he reminded her of the courage that had carried her through fire. His patience never faltered. His words never lost their warmth. One afternoon, as they rested beneath the shade of an old tree, David spoke quietly. He told Anna that beauty was never in a flawless face, but in the soul that refused to surrender. Anna listened, tears glistening in her eyes, realizing that she was no longer defined by scars, but by the love that saw beyond them. Meanwhile,
Rosa and Bella continued to feed their bitterness. They mocked Anna's struggles, saying she was foolish to cling to a man of humble appearance. To them, David was nothing but a poor dreamer, unworthy of attention. They could not see that his strength was greater than wealth, his kindness more powerful than any title. Their words, once knives in Anna's heart, now fell powerless. As weeks passed, the bond between Anna and David deepened. Their laughter echoed in the fields. Their silences were filled with unspoken trust. It was as though fate had torn Anna apart only to bring her back stronger, rebuilt through love. One evening, under the same tree where he once comforted her, David asked Anna to be his wife. There was no diamond ring, no crowd of witnesses, only the golden sunset and the rustle of leaves. Anna's heart swelled with a joy she thought she would never feel again. She said yes with trembling lips, not because she needed rescuing, but because she had found someone who loved her as she was. That night, as Anna lay in David's arms, she realized that love had given her something even more powerful than hope. It had given her life again.
The day of Anna's wedding was unlike any she had ever imagined. There was no golden hall, no sparkling jewels, no crowd of rich guests. Instead, there was the wide shade of the old tree where her love had first taken root. The air smelled of earth and blossoms, and the late afternoon sun poured soft gold across the fields. For Anna, it was more beautiful than any palace. David stood waiting, dressed simply but with quiet dignity, his eyes fixed on the woman walking toward him. Anna moved slowly, her steps still carrying the memory of pain, but her heart steady. She wore a modest dress given by a kind neighbor, nothing extravagant, but when the wind lifted her curls and the light touched her dark skin, she seemed to shine with a radiance that no wealth could buy. Those who gathered were not the powerful or the wealthy. They were ordinary villagers who had seen her struggles and admired her strength. They whispered to one another that never had they witnessed a bride so graceful, not because of riches, but because of resilience. As Anna and David stood beneath the tree, their hands joined, their vows were not about wealth or possessions. They were promises spoken with sincerity, to protect, to honor, and to love each other through whatever storms still lay ahead. Tears welled in Anna's eyes, not of sorrow, but of gratitude. She finally felt what it meant to be truly chosen. But far away, Rosa and Bella scoffed at the simplicity of it all. They mocked the absence of diamonds and the lack of prestige. Bella sneered that her sister had settled for a poor man beneath a tree, while she herself deserved palaces and riches. Rosa's bitterness burned as she imagined the life Anna might still find, one she believed should belong to Bella instead. Yet what they could not see was the truth unfolding. In that quiet field, Anna was richer than either of them had ever been. With David's steady hand holding hers, she no longer carried the weight of scars alone. She carried love, and that love made her stronger than envy, stronger than betrayal, stronger than despair. When the villagers cheered softly and the sun dipped lower, Anna knew her life had entered a new chapter. This was not the end of her trials, but it was the beginning of her triumph.
Life after the wedding seemed simple, almost quiet, yet filled with a joy Anna had never known. She and David built their days with laughter, shared meals, and the comfort of companionship. Each sunrise brought new strength, and each evening ended with the warmth of knowing she was truly loved. It was a happiness so genuine that even the scars on her body began to feel less like chains and more like proof of her survival. But while Anna was healing, Rosa and Bella's lives took a darker turn. The wealth they once boasted of began to crumble. Their debts grew heavier, and the neighbors who used to flatter them now whispered about their arrogance. Bella, once admired for her beauty, found herself ignored by suitors who had once lined up at the door. Rosa's sharp tongue and cold authority no longer held weight. People were tired of her cruelty. Their pride began to rot, leaving them bitter and desperate. In the village, whispers started to rise about David. Some wondered how a man who seemed so humble could provide so steadily, always ensuring Anna had everything she needed. He never flaunted wealth, but there was a quiet confidence in the way he carried himself, a dignity that did not match the image of a poor man. The truth surfaced one afternoon when a group of men in fine suits arrived at the village, addressing David with deep respect. They called him Sir, their voices filled with reverence. Anna watched in shock as David calmly greeted them, his posture shifting from the gentleman she knew at home to someone commanding and powerful. Later, when they were alone, Anna finally asked the question that had lingered in her mind. "Who are you really, David?" Her voice trembled, not from fear, but from disbelief. David took her scarred hand into his own and smiled softly. "I am still the man who loves you," he said, "but the world knows me as something else. I have wealth, more than Rosa or Bella could ever imagine, but I chose to hide it. I needed someone who would see me, not my money." Tears filled Anna's eyes as she realized the depth of his truth. He had chosen her, not in spite of her scars, but because he saw her strength. And now the very family that had thrown her away would soon come begging at her door. The balance of power had shifted. For the first time, Anna stood not as the broken girl they mocked, but as the woman destiny had raised from the ashes.
The whispers in the village grew louder each passing week. Rosa and Bella, once feared and admired, were now seen as symbols of arrogance gone wrong. Their debts had piled so high that creditors knocked on their doors day and night. The fine dresses Bella once wore were sold one by one, and the jewelry that Rosa used to flaunt disappeared into the hands of pawnbrokers. Their home, once filled with laughter and false pride, echoed only with bitterness. Bella stood before a mirror one morning, but the reflection no longer smiled back. Her once admired beauty had faded under the weight of worry and sleepless nights. She thought of Adrian, the man who abandoned Anna, the man she had once dreamed of marrying. But he too had vanished, leaving nothing behind. Clara's mocking words from neighbors stung worse than any wound. They whispered that Bella had been cursed for her cruelty, that no happiness would ever find her. Rosa's rage only grew. She cursed Anna's name, furious that the girl she had called useless now lived in quiet joy with David. But behind the fury was fear. The markets refused her, her neighbors turned away, and even old friends no longer listened. Her power, once absolute in the household, had melted into nothing. One evening, unable to bear the hunger and the shame, Rosa and Bella walked the dusty path to Anna's home. Each step was heavy, each breath laced with humiliation. They arrived at the doorway where Anna once stood, trembling under their cruelty. Now it was they who trembled. Anna opened the door, her scars still visible, but her presence radiant. She no longer looked like the broken girl they had left behind. She stood tall, her eyes calm, her posture filled with quiet dignity. Behind her, David appeared, his gaze steady and unshaken, a silent reminder of the strength at her side. For a long moment, no one spoke. The silence carried the weight of years of torment. Then Bella lowered her head and whispered, "Anna, we need your help." Her voice cracked, filled with desperation.
Rosa, proud even in defeat, clenched her jaw but finally forced the words out. "Please." Anna's heart tightened, not with triumph, but with the ache of memory. The scars on her body still burned when she thought of what they had done. Yet, as she looked at them, fragile and defeated, she realized the power of her journey. They had tried to destroy her, but destiny had lifted her higher than they could ever reach. The girl they had abandoned was gone. In her place stood a woman who had survived fire, betrayal, and despair. And now she was the one they could not live without.
The air outside Anna's home was heavy with silence. Rosa and Bella stood at the doorway, stripped of the pride that once fueled their cruelty. Their clothes were worn, their faces pale, and their eyes restless with shame. Anna looked at them, her heart a storm of emotions. Memories of boiling water, of cruel laughter, of acid burning her skin came rushing back. Every scar on her body seemed to speak at once, reminding her of the torment these two had caused. David's steady hand touched her shoulder, grounding her in the present. He did not speak, but his eyes told her that the choice was hers. For the first time in her life, she was not the weak girl who had to obey. She was the woman with the power to decide. Bella's voice trembled as she repeated her plea. "Anna, please, we have nothing left." Her once confident posture was gone, her straight black hair falling messily across her face as tears rolled down. Rosa stood beside her, jaw tight, pride still clinging to her like a fragile mask. But even she could not hide the desperation in her eyes. Anna's breath caught in her chest. She had dreamed of this moment once, dreamed of seeing them broken the way they had broken her, yet now that it had arrived, she felt no joy. Instead, there was only an ache, heavy and deep. She could not erase the past, but she also knew that hatred could not heal her wounds. Slowly, Anna spoke, her voice calm but firm. "You left me to die. You mocked my pain. You tried to destroy me. And yet, here you are." The words hung in the air like stones. Bella sobbed openly while Rosa closed her eyes, her shoulders shaking for the first time in years. David stepped forward, placing himself beside Anna, not as her savior, but as her equal. His presence reminded everyone that Anna was no longer alone. Then Anna made her choice. "I will not become like you," she said softly. "I will not let bitterness rule me. I will help you, not because you deserve it, but because I refuse to carry hatred any longer." Her words struck harder than anger ever could. Rosa bowed her head, unable to speak. Bella wept into her hands. Anna felt the weight lift from her chest, not because the scars had vanished, but because her soul had found peace. At last, the girl who once begged for mercy had become the woman who could give it. In the days that followed Anna's decision, the village could hardly believe what had happened. The girl, once cast aside, had opened her door to the very people who had tried to destroy her. Some whispered that she was too kind. Others said she was a fool. But Anna did not care about their judgment. For the first time, her soul felt light. Forgiveness had not erased her scars, but it had freed her from the chains of bitterness. David stood proudly by her side, guiding her into this new chapter. Together, they tended a small garden behind their home. Each seed Anna planted seemed to mirror her journey, broken once, buried in darkness, yet capable of sprouting into new life. She laughed more often now, her voice ringing through the yard, and every laugh reminded David why he had fallen in love with her. But life was not as merciful for Rosa and Bella. Though Anna had agreed to help them survive, she could not shield them from the truth of their downfall. Rosa, who had once commanded respect, now walked through the market with lowered eyes. No one moved aside for her anymore. The sharpness in her voice had lost its edge, and neighbors who once feared her now dismissed her with pity. Bella,
stripped of the beauty she had always used as her weapon, found herself surrounded by emptiness. Suitors turned away, friends abandoned her, and the mirror she once adored now reflected only sorrow. She would sit for hours staring at her hands, remembering the cruelty they had carried out against her sister. For the first time, regret carved deeper lines in her heart than pride ever had. Anna watched them carefully, not with vengeance, but with a strange mix of sadness and clarity. She had extended her hand, but she knew only they could choose what to do with it. Rosa clung to fragments of pride, refusing to speak of guilt. Bella wept often, whispering apologies that came too late. The balance of fate had shifted. Anna, once the weakest, now walked in strength, loved and respected. Rosa and Bella, once powerful in cruelty, now lived with the weight of consequences. And as the sun set over the village one evening, Anna sat beside David, her hand resting in his. She knew the story was not over. Forgiveness had been given, but the true redemption, or the final punishment, still lay ahead.
The weeks after forgiveness marked a turning point in Anna's life. No longer did she walk with her head lowered, avoiding the gaze of others. Now, when she entered the market, people greeted her with respect. Mothers whispered to their daughters about her strength, and fathers admired her resilience. She was no longer the poor girl kicked out of her home. She was a woman who had risen from ashes, a symbol of courage in the village. David, always steady by her side, continued to reveal more of himself. He did not flaunt his wealth, yet the signs could no longer be hidden. The men in fine suits who visited, the quiet way he handled affairs that reached beyond the village, the respect shown to him wherever he went, all spoke of a life far greater than he had ever admitted. To Anna, none of it mattered. Whether rich or poor, she saw only the man who had loved her scars and healed her soul. Rosa and Bella watched from the shadows of their downfall. Their once proud household had turned into a shell of its former self. Rosa's pride burned into bitterness, but even she could not deny the reality. The same neighbors who once praised Bella's beauty now spoke only of Anna's strength. Bella, consumed with regret, found her tears endless. She could not escape the truth. The sister she had despised now lived a life she herself had always dreamed of. One evening, the village gathered beneath the great tree where Anna and David had exchanged vows. It was no longer just a wedding tree, it had become a symbol. Villagers wanted to honor Anna, to celebrate her resilience. As she stood before them, the wind rustling through her dark curls, her scars visible but no longer shameful, silence fell. Anna spoke not with anger, but with grace. She reminded them that pain can destroy, but it can also build. That betrayal can cut deep, but it can also teach the value of true love. Her words flowed with calm authority, carrying the weight of someone who had walked through fire and survived. The crowd cheered, their voices rising into the night. Rosa lowered her eyes, Bella wept silently, and David stood proudly beside his wife. That night, the world finally saw Anna not as a victim, but as a woman reborn. And this rise was only the beginning of her destiny.
The night after Anna's speech under the great tree, the village was still buzzing with admiration. People could not stop talking about how she had transformed from a broken girl into a woman of strength. But there was something even greater waiting to be revealed, something that would shake not only Rosa and Bella, but the entire village. A few days later, carriages and men in fine suits once again arrived. This time, they came not quietly, but with open respect. They addressed David with titles that no villager had ever heard before.
Papers were handed to him, contracts signed, decisions made with authority. The villagers watched in silence, their eyes wide as the truth became undeniable. David was not an ordinary man. He was a man of immense power and wealth, a hidden billionaire who had chosen a humble life to find genuine love. The whispers spread like wildfire. How could the man who appeared so simple hold such influence? How could it be that Anna, the girl once cast aside, was now the wife of a man whose name commanded respect far beyond their borders? Rosa and Bella stood frozen at the edge of the crowd, their faces drained of color, their bodies trembling as the realization sank in. All their schemes, all their pride, all their cruel laughter had led to this moment of humiliation. The girl they had ridiculed now stood beside a man far greater than anyone they had ever hoped to impress. Desperation overtook them. Bella was the first to step forward, tears streaking down her face. She fell to her knees before Anna and David, her voice breaking as she pleaded, "Please, Anna, forgive us once more. Help us, we have nothing." Her long black hair fell into the dirt as she bowed, her pride shattered. Rosa hesitated, her jaw clenched, her pride fighting its last battle. But the weight of reality was too much. Slowly, painfully, she too lowered herself, kneeling in front of the daughter she had despised. Her eyes, once sharp and cold, were filled with fear. "Anna, I beg you," she whispered, her voice cracking. The entire village watched in stunned silence. The powerful mother and her favored daughter, once cruel and untouchable, now begging at the feet of the woman they had tried to destroy. Anna stood still, her scars catching the light, her eyes steady. She felt no triumph, no gloating, only the heavy truth that destiny had brought everything full circle, and the choice of what to do with them was once again hers alone. The village square was silent as Rosa and Bella knelt in the dirt. All eyes were on Anna. The woman once mocked as weak and unwanted now stood tall, her scars illuminated by the fading light of day. David stood beside her, calm but unwavering, letting her be the one to decide. It was not his battle. This moment belonged to Anna alone. Her heart pounded, not with fear, but with the weight of choice. The memories of screams, of burning pain, of cruel laughter rushed back like a storm. She remembered how Rosa's cold eyes had looked down on her, how Bella's mocking smile had cut deeper than any wound. The scars on her body seemed to ache with each memory. And yet, standing before them, she felt no hatred, only clarity. Anna's voice broke the silence. It was steady, firm, and carried the authority of someone who had endured fire and survived. "You took everything from me, my dignity, my peace, my hope. You left me to die when I needed you most, and now you kneel before me." Her words were heavy, but they did not tremble. Bella sobbed, begging again, her tears soaking the ground. Rosa remained quiet, her pride finally shattered, her head bowed low. Anna looked around at the villagers. She saw their expectant faces, waiting to see if she would destroy those who had destroyed her. And for a moment, the temptation was there, to let Rosa and Bella taste the full weight of their cruelty. But then she saw David's eyes, gentle and strong, reminding her of who she had become. Taking a deep breath, Anna spoke again. "I will not be like you. I will not answer cruelty with cruelty. I choose to forgive, not for you, but for myself. I will help you, but never again will you have power over me." The crowd erupted in murmurs of awe. Some wept, others nodded in respect. Rosa and Bella remained on their knees, broken by mercy more than anger. Anna had not destroyed them with revenge. She had destroyed them with grace. David took her hand, and together
They turned away, leaving Rosa and Bella to face the consequences of their own choices. As the sun sank behind the fields, Anna felt peace wash over her. She had walked through betrayal, suffering, and despair. But she had emerged stronger, not because of wealth or power, but because she had chosen love over hatred, hope over despair, and forgiveness over vengeance. Her story was no longer one of tragedy. It was a story of triumph.
The village slowly returned to its rhythm, but nothing was quite the same. Everyone had witnessed the fall of Rosa and Bella and the rise of Anna. The once silent girl who suffered in the shadows was now the woman people admired, the one whose strength became a story whispered in every corner. Children repeated her name with awe, and elders spoke of her resilience as a lesson for generations. Anna and David walked together through the village, not as strangers, but as symbols of hope. People greeted them warmly, not for their wealth or hidden power, but for their kindness and their strength. Yet, Anna knew deep inside that life was not finished testing her. Destiny had not brought her this far only to let her rest. One evening, as the sky turned crimson, David stood at the edge of their land, speaking quietly with men who had traveled from afar. Their voices were low, but Anna sensed something heavier than ordinary business. When she asked him, he smiled, but did not answer. His silence left her uneasy. Perhaps her battles with Rosa and Bella were not the final ones. Perhaps another storm was waiting beyond the horizon. Still, as she leaned against David's shoulder, Anna allowed herself to breathe. For the first time, she felt the warmth of belonging, not to a cruel family, but to a true partner who had chosen her scars and all. But fate has a way of testing those who believe they have found peace. The winds that had once carried whispers of betrayal now carried rumors of something greater. Forces beyond the village, choices that would demand even more courage. And Anna, though stronger than ever, wondered if her heart was ready. The night deepened, the stars glimmered, and the world seemed to pause. This chapter of Anna's life had closed, but the next was already beginning to write itself. Life lesson: true strength is not found in beauty or wealth, but in the courage to forgive and the resilience to rise again. Love that sees beyond scars is the kind of love that heals not just the body, but the soul. Thank you for walking through part 3 of Anna's journey with us. Your time and support mean everything. Now let us ask you, if you were in Anna's place, facing the family that destroyed you, would you choose forgiveness or justice?